Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. Deputy Mayor Tanner, seconded by Councillor Thorburn. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the town of Bridgewater is located in Mi'kma'ki, which is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Are there any announcements from members of council? No, you're going to have to mention the 55-plus games that you're going to.
Well, no, I probably should, because they're on this weekend from the 16th to the 18th, but I think what's important to the residents and the communities in general is the sledge hockey's coming back to Bridgewater, December the 5th to the 11th. And right now, we know the U.S. and Canada is confirmed, so we don't know the other two teams, but we're meeting bi-weekly, and it will happen, and just like to get the word out early.
And I'm sure everyone remembers how awesome that was the last time it was here. I know it, at first, I don't think people really knew what to expect, and then I think most, if not all, the games were eventually sold out just because it was such a really exciting sport for people to see, and I know the schools liked it, so.
So we're going to be busy and meeting quite a bit, but it's going to be a good venue, and I hope everybody will take time to either check it online or come and sit at the LCLC.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk about the 55-plus games that you're attending?
Sure. The 55-plus games are happening in Yarmouth, and there's somewhere around 200 participants in various sports. And actually, I'm going up Thursday to play crib. Who knew? What? 55 games. But yeah, it's very exciting. And the first and second place winners of that goes next year to the Nationals, maybe in Kelowna, BC, because I may get out there for some pickleball. But great venue. Yarmouth is well prepared, lots of support, and it'd be a great venue there.
Well, best of luck to you and all participants, Councillor Thorburn.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Tanner.
Just yesterday I was pleased to represent the town of Bridgewater at the Fishers Memorial Service in Lunenburg, and it was a very touching service and very well done, and thank you for the town of Lunenburg for inviting us.
Thank you for attending on our behalf. Any other announcements from members of council? There are 3 proclamations that are posted to the town's website. The first is that September 27th to October 3rd is Right to Know Week, which is a celebration of access to information from local government. So that proclamation is on the town's website, as is a note that Wrongful Conviction Day is October 2nd. And also that proclamation for Energy Efficiency Day, which is October 6th. So I'd encourage you to check out bridgewater.ca for those proclamations. And last call for any announcements before I call Mr. Frank down to either podium. And just as he's getting settled in, maybe I'll just say a couple words. I know that I've received a few messages already from people concerned with the increase in cases, and I just want to remind people that we've been through this before, and everyone in Lunenburg County especially knows what to do. We have no active cases right now in Lunenburg Queens County, and that is because people are doing everything they need to do in order to keep themselves and others safe. So I just want to reassure people that just stick to the protocols, do what you know you need to do, and we'll get through this wave just as we have the 3 previous. So just stay the course. Now, Mr. Frank is here for Citizens for Public Transit, and the floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Mayor Mitchell, councilors, staff, guests, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you to follow up since our last visit, where we presented our feasibility study on public transit report. My name is Stuart Frank, and I'm the chair of the Citizens for Public Transit. I'm here to reintroduce Citizens for Public Transit and to get to know our current council. It's been a long time since we've been here, and a belated congratulations to you folks. And we also want to share our vision and strategy to actively promote a regional public transit system. We are a small group of volunteers, advocates, very dedicated and effective board of directors, and we thank your council and staff for all the support that you've given us over the years. Our mandate is to promote the establishment of a cost-effective, safe, affordable, accessible, regional public transit system in the municipality of the District of Lunenburg and the towns of Bridgewater, Mahone Bay, and Lunenburg. Reaching further into the rural and coastal communities may be seen as next steps. Imagine, if you will, buses connecting Lunenburg County communities every day, moving people to appointments, meetings, shopping, work, dining, beaches, enabling students to engage in after-school activities, linking friends and neighborhoods, and more. Residents, tourists, and visitors taking the bus to area events and attractions. This is the vision that CPT has been actively promoting for decades. We are believers. There we go. We confidently believe that we all win whenever a person takes the bus. We are all paying now to get people around, with or without public transit. There are environmental, economic, social, health, and equity benefits to public transportation. We believe that public transit is an essential service and merits public support, such as the same as utilities, roads, highways, bridges, parks, and sidewalks, and we really believe that publicly funded transportation is a human right. We take very small credit for having some influence in this area, such as the creation of a joint transportation committee, which is now kind of at state, and the start of Bridgewater Transit over the last 3 or 4 administrations, and also the initiation of maritime bus service. In 2019, we presented our feasibility study. It was funded by the Community Culture and Heritage and conducted by CBCL Consultants. There is now a well-funded and researched consultants report to work with. Much of the work has been done. And there's a copy available in our Facebook group if should you wish to pursue that. The report itself is dedicated to the memory of Norm Haslett, who was a long-standing member and former chair of CPT. There's a lot of great information in the report, but it needs your local flavor and input. And I'm just going to share a couple quotes. Having a regional public transit system that services the towns and the rural communities in Lunenburg County would provide much needed access for residents to services in the towns, including trips to the hospitals, health appointments, their place of employment, and for leisure purposes. Further, by not having a regional public transit system within Lunenburg County, it could be argued that access to specific services such as health, education, employment, and social development are limited by the lack of affordable, accessible, and available transportation. The benefits of having a regional public transit system are many, and there are tremendous benefits for everyone in the community. Goals for a regional public transit system are laid out for you. I'm not going to read through all of them, but we'd like to see it connect Lunenburg, Mahone Bay, Bridgewater, and Modal, and expand over time as the needs are identified to other rural areas or remote areas. This is a good opportunity for us to help with post-pandemic infrastructure and rebounding. People talk about building back better and just recovery and extinction rebellion. We must find ways to be and do better than we had become accustomed to in the past. Good enough is not good enough. We need an effective, efficient service to meet community needs and provide residents access to services reciprocally. The bus runs both ways, in and out of town. We must focus on the possibilities and the positive outcomes. It must reflect new realities and complement other transportation options. Collaboration versus competition or replacement. There will always be need for on-demand dial-a-ride systems, for example, as they provide such an important service to, albeit perhaps a relatively small population. But this initiative requires a concerted effort, 4 municipalities working together rather than in silos. On a larger province-wide scale, we need to look to develop a linked regional transportation system, such as Leading with Transit suggests. We know that there is ongoing conversation now between the town of Bridgewater and Modal about a feasibility study to extend or add bus service to Osprey Village and other areas. Please, this is a great time to look at a much larger picture than that small route and not be short-sighted. This is a perfect opportunity to get staff and council representatives together at the table to discuss the interest and the possibility of a regional public transit service. The need for public transit is greater than ever. We're growing, and the need to get people around to towns and cities is never been greater. We have such an influx of new home buyers, and this increased population will support added ridership and finance this desperately needed service. While rural communities flourish, so does the need to travel into villages and towns and rural areas. Invariably, this leads to an increased number of cars on the road, more paved parking lot areas, and increases pollution, and the need for more costly roads and bigger highways. Many families may want to avoid the purchase of that second or third vehicle as the children grow to the point where they need to participate in after-school activities or indeed have a job. A recent population projection by modal staff reveals that the average age will increase to 65 years old by 2040, indicating that there will be more seniors looking to leave the car parked and avail themselves of public transit. Environmental concerns have become a primary driver of policy for all of our municipalities, and public transit systems are part of that solution to meeting emissions targets, and each municipality is doing its part, and including Bridgewater is very forward-thinking, and planning staff are working on the sustainability and transit files. We applaud your efforts. As far as funding is concerned, there is fortunately, there are greater opportunities, provincially and federally, coming down the pipe, perhaps, depending the outcome next week, to fund rural transportation systems. There are also initiatives to deploy alternative energy sources. So we feel it's vital that we build back post-pandemic and invest in infrastructure, taking a hard look at the environmental, economic, social, health, and equity benefits of public transportation. The councils and staff from Modal and the towns of Bridgewater, Lunenburg, and Mahone Bay must work together in this regard. Create a plan to satisfy the needs of the majority of residents and to address several of the major crises facing our communities. We continue to meet with municipal planners or anyone that'll listen to elaborate on the ongoing conversation about public transit and to promote collaboration, the two first steps that are necessary to an intermunicipal system. So what's next for CPT? We have our AGM coming up in October. We're going to continue to meet with you folks and with staff from the towns and municipality, and we're going to delve deeper in the need for a public transit authority to develop a transit system through conversations with the Nova Scotia Utility Review Board. We've had meetings with them already, and it's very successful. Engage politicians and candidates during elections, build partnerships on community transit, environmental, and social welfare groups. We are not going away. We will be here for decades to come. But now is the time to work with other municipalities and the Utility Review Board to start a regional public transit system, whether it's through a transit authority or some other arrangement. But let's get rolling ahead with public transit.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Perfect, yeah. I guess I'll just start by, obviously, you're preaching a little bit to the choir.
Somewhat, I know that.
Yeah, and you are right to point out that we've engaged with MODL to say that because they made the request for transit out to Exit 12, and so council made the decision to request that a feasibility study be done to see what that looks like. So just a couple of, so historically, you know that there was a plan working towards regional public transit. It kind of came off the rails, and so the town of Bridgewater decided, we weren't going to wait any longer, so we launched Bridgewater Transit. But that doesn't mean that we're not open to working with neighbors, but we have ours, they have to figure out how their pieces work with ours. But I'm curious, all that to say, how has we've gone through a pandemic, but how has the maritime bus pilot gone? So that must be almost done, I would think, or have they extended it?
Transportation, the subsidy was extended, I think, don't correct me if I'm wrong, but I think until the spring of 2022.
Okay, that's good.
Now they've had reduced service, reduced ridership, and it's been hanging along, and hopefully with reopening after COVID that it could build again, and maybe even run 6 or 7 days a week and maybe more than one trip per day.
Yeah, and I know it's not really a fair apples-to-apples comparison, because I think the expectation for regional transportation would be, public transit would be through the county on a regular basis, not once a day, but I was just curious to see how ridership was going. Other questions from members of council on that? No? All right, we're just waiting to hear back from MODL. We haven't heard back, so.
Yeah, I had one thing.
Yes, of course.
When we're speaking with MODL and the town of Bridgewater, to me, it kind of behooves the need to get everybody at the table. There is interest from the town of Lunenburg, and there's interest from the town of Mahone Bay. And there would be an opportunity then to look at a much bigger picture than just a straight line to Osprey Village and back. And I think that the residents in the areas would support that.
And I don't think any of us really disagree on that. I think that I just go, for me, and I don't want to speak for the rest of council, for me, I go back to the original, which is we couldn't wait, so we did our thing. And so I think we've demonstrated not only its success, but our willingness and support of public transit. But to your point, you've got other communities that are interested. I don't recall them coming and asking us for a sit-down or information or, we have a mayor's wardens meeting on a regular basis, but public transit hasn't been something that we've put a lot of meat on. Do you know what I mean? It comes up like a question, but it doesn't.
The last time, there was a presentation that was done maybe 2 years ago from Citizens for Public Transit, and at that time, council indicated their willingness to, if the other municipal units were willing to have those conversations, that we'd be willing to have those as well, and that's kind of just where it kind of laid. And there hasn't been any regional conversations to say, let's take a real deep dive into this to see if it could work. So I think it's kind of really for the other municipal units to indicate where they are with it too, right? If they're willing to explore it and look at it.
And I do think it needs to be more than just exit 12 and back, Walmart and back. It has to be regional in nature, right? I think you'd have to include New Germany, you have to include Lunenburg, Mahone Bay, and people need to move around the county, not just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Did you have a question, Deputy Mayor? You look like you were just... No. Is it a blessing and a curse being in person now? Because on Teams, I couldn't see when people might have had a question, and now out of the corner of my eye, I see go, I'm like, oh, you have a question. That was my bad. Anything else from council? No? All right. Well,
Thank you so
forward
much.
to this continuing along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
Our second delegation is not able to attend tonight, so we'll have that rescheduled from Coastal Action. You have the minutes of August 9th, regular council meeting in your agenda package. Any errors or omissions or deletions there? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as circulated? Councilor Frazier, seconded by Councilor Thorburn. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll go down to planning items. We have a public hearing now, and I will we'll kind of suspend the council meeting. I'll declare the public hearing is now open. And the agenda is, it's the Municipal Planning Strategy Amendments for Active Transportation Plan 2020. All statutory requirements have been met. And just a reminder that council's decision is governed by the Municipal Planning Strategy. And now we'll turn it over to Ms. Childs, who will give us an overview and a presentation.
Thank you. Great. So this application is for amendments to the municipal planning strategy, and it comes from staff. The proposed amendments reflect the new active transportation plan that was endorsed by council in 2020. The vision for the AT plan is walking, wheeling, and cycling are safe, convenient, and enjoyable ways to move around Bridgewater for users of all ages and abilities and are a common part of everyday life. There's 3 overarching themes for the 21 action items that are included in the plan, and the plan also provides design guidance for the development of future active transportation infrastructure. So the specific application is mainly looking to update Map 5, which is the Active Transportation Network map, and the accompanying policies and context text. And the reason for these amendments is to update the municipal planning strategy pursuant to policy T15. So like I said, the focus of the proposed amendments is to update Map 5, but it also includes text amendments to policies T14 and T16 to reflect the new active transportation plan, and for some contextual purposes, changes to the accompanying descriptive text. So policy T15 states that it shall be the policy of council to update and maintain Map 5 active transportation network, which designates all AT routes in town and identifies where AT infrastructure improvements are needed on existing streets. So that is what spurred this amendment application. And the MPS should be updated to reflect the new map. So this is the current map that is in our MPS. It shows different prioritization levels for different routes across Bridgewater. And this is the updated map. It shows present AT routes in town and identifies where AT infrastructure improvements are recommended on existing streets and the type of active transportation facilities that would be proposed. So in addition to replacing the map, policy T14, T16, and context text in sections 11.2.5 and 14.3.2 are proposed to be amended. And so policy T14 would require amendment to change the name and the date of the plan to state Active Transportation Plan 2020. Policy T16 would require an amendment to also change the name and date. And then amendments would also be required to update the descriptive text. So this includes changing the title of the old Active Transportation and Connectivity Plan 2008 to the Active Transportation Plan 2020 where applicable, and that includes section 11.2.5. And it would also include updating the description in section 14.3.2, Active Transportation Infrastructure, to reflect the new plan. And these changes would more or less provide a summary of what the new plan focuses on and what the new network map shows. A public participation meeting was scheduled for July 21st here in Town Hall. An advertisement was placed in the South Shore Breaker 1 week in advance of the meeting, and was also advertised on the town's Facebook page. No members of the public attended. And in looking at policy to support this amendment, the municipal planning strategy has 15 objective statements to guide the policy, and of particular importance are the ones listed here. So encouraging compact development, supporting a functional and sustainable transportation network, improving the pedestrian experience, promoting the use of sustainable infrastructure, and undertaking adaptation and mitigation measures to prepare the community for impacts of climate change. Staff also reviewed other MPS policies related to active transportation, and the following shown on here relate. So I won't list them all, but you can see that policy T14 and T16 are the ones that we are amending, and the other ones just relate to active transportation in general. So as a summary, the amendments are to replace Map 5, the Active Transportation Network map, text amendments to policies T14 and 16, and amendments to the descriptive text that accompanies some sections. So staff recommend that town council for the town of Bridgewater give second and final consideration to the amendments to the municipal planning strategy as contained in Appendix A for the AT plan. And I'll just mention that the next steps are, if it were to be approved, that the amendments would be reviewed by the Provincial Director of Planning with 30 days for that review, and then notice would be published in the newspaper.
Thank you. Questions from members of council of the planner? Any questions? Councillor Thorburn?
Just one, open spaces. Does that work well with that plan?
Yeah, so
Because
it's...
they're kind of intertwined.
Yeah, exactly. So the active transportation plan itself didn't focus too much on open spaces, but it did mention the connectivity of it, and then the open space will be kind of referencing the AT plan since
Okay,
it was done
thank you.
prior to.
Any other questions? I know this is second and final reading, so we've kind of already gone through this. Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, and then we will return to the council meeting, and I will be looking for a motion from council, please. Councillor Nicola.
Move the council for the town of Bridgewater give second and final consideration to the municipal planning strategy to reflect the new active transportation plan 2020 as contained in Appendix A of document 21-090A.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Conklin. Further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We're down to reports and recommendations and the Safe Restart Funding Agreement. So council will remember that during COVID, some funds were released by the provincial government to help municipalities get through the pandemic, which we're not through it yet, but I'll turn it over to the CAO to kind of run through what's in this one.
So, as was mentioned, we did get some funding to help offset some of the expenses related to COVID restart. We got that funding in 2020, and we came to council with a list of items and said, here's how we will propose to use that. And it was confirmed that we had the ability to carry those funds also over into 21-22 fiscal year, which we did. And if you remember, I believe it was 300 and some thousand that we had allocated in our operating budget, just a lump sum, and indicated that we would come back to council and say, here's the overall list of expenditures that we see taking up the total amount of funding for COVID-19 restart, so you'd be aware of what those are. So within the report, you'll see that I've categorized them into larger categories. There is a detailed sheet at the end of the report that has it down to the laptop in terms of expenditures. But essentially, we had received $593,000 for COVID restart for general operations, and then we had transit funding of $44,000. And for the general town expenditures, we looked at equipment and software. So we did some phone system upgrades. So some of those were budgeted last year, but we rolled a lot of those expenses over into this year. Laptops to facilitate the work from home, and software to automate processes. So we had time and attendance and those types of improvements that would enable us to do those things remotely, reduce the amount of paper that was being used in terms of doing time and attendance, and just automate those processes. So there's $115,000 for that. Workspace modification. So one of the requirements for the restart was that workplaces incorporate physical distancing and barriers where those couldn't be achieved. And in some of our high traffic areas where we receive the public, like our reception areas, that we look at providing those types of physical barriers for staff as well as the public who come in. So we did do some workplace modifications, and you can see them throughout the building, and those are listed in detail as well. Those included creating office spaces where we had open spaces before, putting up the plexiglass barriers in place as well. We created some workspace at the Bridgewater Memorial Arena to have remote offices, because a lot of staff had shared spaces, so we had to look at that. Same with the water treatment facilities as well. In terms of labor, we had, during the first wave, had to split our public works crews. So we had one crew at home one week, one crew at work, and that was split so that if someone did contract COVID-19, that we didn't wipe out the entire crew. So we needed to have those back, those split crews to do that. But that did mean that we were having some lost time because there was a crew at home and a crew at work. And that amounted to $104,000. Winter maintenance, council had asked that we up the sidewalk and trail maintenance last year, and we have it planned for this year as well. And so that was, it was a pilot last year to snow blow or plow the trail, the Centennial Trail, which we did. And so to encourage people to go outside. So there's funds for that, $53,000. We also had some miscellaneous OH&S supplies, extra cleaning that had to be done, hand sanitizer, masks, PPE, and extra porta potty cleaning this year that council approved in the budget. And then this year there's loss of recreation revenue for program registration of $26,200, so we can claim that. And then we have the LCLC operating grant. So we have last year's loss that we know the number, and then we're estimating this year, so that's $113,000. Transit. At this point, we have a loss in revenue of $27,565 that we're projecting, and PPE, some extra PPE that we had to acquire, like mask and hand sanitizer and those types of things. If we're unable to complete all of the initiatives that are here, and particularly in terms of workspace modifications or winter maintenance, we don't have a lot of snow and that's down. We do have some others on the hit list that we'd like to propose would kind of be the backup in there. One is software, so $10,000 for an e-procurement solution. So one of the things we determined when we had to lock the doors was people needed to drop off tenders and have those. We weren't set up to take them electronically, and it's not as simple as just taking an email, because the security of the bid and everything has to be protected. So there is software out there that we can acquire. We've been looking at that, and it's around $10,000. And that would enable that submissions electronically, as opposed to having a sealed envelope dropped off in a box here at the office. And then just some more meeting room equipment that would enable for us to have more remote meetings using ClickShare, like what you see in the committee room, and that would be for the other boardroom that we have on the 4th floor. So that's how it's allocated, and as indicated, council has already approved the budget with the gross amount in there, but we provided it to you in a broad category, as well as at the end of the report you can see where we have the original budget and then the revised budget to allocate those. So we're just looking for council's approval of the expenditures.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions from councilors of the CAO? Councilor Thorburn.
Just one, in the LCLC operating budget, I see we have $113,778 for the Safe Restart funding from COVID-19. That being a shared business between two municipal units, did MODL put in that
That's
kind of
our
money as well?
share.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to make sure that open and transparency.
Yep, no,
Yep.
that would be half of what the total, right?
That's right.
We would put in equal.
Our operating grant covers what they aren't able to raise in revenue to offset expenditures, so that just means that's our share of the operating grant that's going up.
Yeah, no, good question, thank you.
No, it would have been beneficial maybe to show both amounts there and show our share, and then I wouldn't have to ask the question on future documents, so we know what the total amount is and what our share is.
Make a note of that.
Okay?
Other questions from council? Someone prepared to make a motion? Deputy Mayor?
I move that council for the town of Bridgewater approve the list of expenditures proposed and contained in document 20-205A to be funded from the Safe Restart funding received by the town.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Frazier. Further discussion?
Question?
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Now we're down to RFP 2021-06, Professional Services Economic Development Strategy Market Research.
Okay, so council has developed as one of its strategic priorities the development of an economic development strategy that will help guide the town in terms of its economic development priorities. The budget contained $30,000 to have this work completed. An RFP was issued in August 4 professional services that would essentially do the research required for the development of an economic development strategy. So it would be looking at community profiles, market analysis, sector analysis, and stakeholder engagement that would provide a summary research report to council that would help inform the development of an economic development strategy or your priorities, what it is you want to achieve, knowing that background. And then also to work with council in the development of the economic development strategy. So make some recommendations in terms of, based on the research, some recommendations with respect to where council might want to go and look with respects to economic development, but also facilitate a workshop when council develops its priorities, assist in the development of metrics to help determine what success would look like and how to measure that, and prepare a final document for council. So we received 6 proposals. There was a group that was created to review the proposals, and based on the technical and cost score, the proponent that had the highest score was Group ATN with a score of 91.6. And the recommendation is that council award the contract to Group ATN for the value of the contract being $28,613 plus HST.
Thank you. Questions on that one? Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Tam, it seems like quite an aggressive timeline. Are they're agreed to that deliverable? Like, that seems like a lot of pressure on them more than us. But
They have indicated that they are aware and able to meet that timeline.
Okay.
So Group ATN had also done some of the market analysis with respects to Exit 12A, so there is a
Some
bit of
history.
familiarity and some
Okay.
information already gathered.
We're going to find out. Other questions? Is someone prepared to make a motion? Councilor Frazier?
Yes, I'll make a motion, Your Worship, that council for the town of Bridgewater award RFP 2021-06 Professional Services Economic Development Strategy Market Research to Group ATN for the cost of $28,613 plus HST.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Thorburn. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next item is tender 21-06E, pump station 11 replacement, new river crossing and force main pump station replacement and force main contract. This is a very large item, but no one is better to walk us through this than Mrs. Buchanan. So it's all up to you now.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. No pressure. So tonight I wanted to discuss with you 2 tenders, 2106E and 2107E. As you may recall, the town of Bridgewater entered into a multi-year cost agreement a sharing agreement with Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP, in July 2019. The multi-year program included a design and construction phases. So design was to happen between 2019 to 2021, and that would design new Pump Station 11 upgrades and new force main between Pump Station 11 and the wastewater treatment plant. 2021-22 would be the first part of the construction contract, the replacement of Pump Station 11. And 2022-23 would be the installation of the new river line between Pump Station 11 and the treatment plant. Design work was completed in June 2021, and tenders were issued for both construction projects in July 2021. The reason we put out both construction projects at the same time is in order to do this project and get our reduction in overflows, it's essential to do both. We needed to upgrade the existing station so it had the capacity to take the overflows directly to the treatment plant. So if we didn't put both tenders out and one came in higher than the other substantially, there was no point to do one project without the other. So this allowed us to get prices for both at the same time, so you could evaluate at the same time, and then we would follow our agreement awarding one in this fiscal year and one in next fiscal year. So tenders closed the 31st of August. Contract 1, which is Pump Station 11 replacement, 2106E. It had 2 bids, and the total budget for the project was $3.5 million. That's net HST. Low bid came in at $3,597,736.64 net HST. So that project is over budget by $97,736.64 net HST, which would have to be funded through reserves if we were to move forward. The second tender closed same day, and we had 1 bidder for this project, Contract 2, which is the new force main across the river, 2107E. The total budget for that project is $3.6 million net HST. Low bid for that project was $3,504,186.89 net HST. So the difference in our total budget and the low bid is actually $95,813.11 net HST. In addition to the construction contracts, we also have had previous pre-approval to award engineering construction services to OnGlobe, and that was a cost of $115,633.88 net HST, which would be required in order to proceed with these construction contracts. So that would be an additional cost that would also have to come out of reserves in order to award these projects. So this evening, we're looking to recommend to council to award both tenders. Tender 1, 2106E for the replacement of Pump Station 11 would go to low bidder Mid-Valley Construction for a cost of $3,967,356.25, including HST, with over expenditures to be funded from wastewater reserves. The second tender, we would require a pre-approval for the 2022-23 capital budget of $3.6 million net HST for the wastewater treatment plant Pump Station 11 design and replacement budget item. And that would give us the ability to award tender 2107E, Pump Station New River Crossing and Force Main to low bidder Dexter Construction Company for a cost of $3,864,195.50, including HST. Any questions?
This is big, but it's not just big with a price tag. This is big in terms of reducing our overflows in the river. I don't think we can really overstate that this is a big step forward.
This is.
So I know that, we've done a good job of educating the people in the town that we have a problem. I feel like we've reminded them of that so often, but now we're finally seeing the work towards the solution. So as much as I look at the number and go, oh, like it just gives me a little bit of try to drink my water and just want to go down. But this is a good step forward.
Yeah, and just to kind of soften those numbers a bit, we did receive some Invest in Canada infrastructure funding for these. We applied for that a couple years ago and was awarded that, so this is a multi-year project. So Audrey's report does note that we have $1.584 million for the $3.5 million component, and then we have $2.1 million in grant money for the 3.6. So that's, I guess, important to note as well.
Very much.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Tanner.
Audrey, in the second response from Mid-Valley, the 400 millimeter diameter pipe was reduced quite substantially. There was a reduction in that line item. But up above in their earlier bid, the price is quite considerably higher. Why is that?
I believe, and I would have to default back to finance because they did the final checks, but I think there were some additional errors which they clarified as part of the bid review process.
Additional what?
There was some addition
Like
errors.
mathematical errors, you mean?
Yes.
But
Yes, as they were, their numbers that they put down on this paper weren't identical to their bid sheet that they submitted, so they had to clarify that.
But I guess the unit price is substantially more for the same product in the first than it is in the second. It's like $2,800 per unit versus $1,400 per unit?
And I'll double check it, but I
Okay.
think it was an error in transferring information, and we can only put down what's read out at the actual tender process, and then they have to clarify it later.
Okay. I mean, I guess if it were me, I'd go back and argue the first price. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know all the details on this either.
We can get that information if you want. Other questions?
Do you want a motion?
I would love the first motion, please.
Well,
Yes.
first a question, then a motion.
Okay.
If I heard you correct, Audrey, we were overexpended by 97,000 on one and below on the other one, so we're pretty much a wash, really, I think, a couple thousand
Very
dollars.
close, it's
Yeah.
just under 2,000.
So we're really not borrowing 97,000 because we got 95 short on the second one.
There's one item that does put us over though, right? There's
The consulting services,
Right.
which are
That's not on
required,
this.
it was pre-approved, but
Right.
it would also come out of reserves.
Okay, no, great. So I would move that council of the town of Bridgewater award tender 21-06E, pump station replacement in new force main contract number 1, pumping station number 11, replacement to the low bidder, Mid-Valley Construction 1997 Limited, for a cost of $3,967,356.25, including HST, and $3,597,736.64 net HST, with over expenditures to be funding from wastewater reserves.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Caldwell. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Care to make the second motion, Councillor Thorburn?
Yes, Your Worship. I would move that council for the town of Bridgewater pre-approve 2022-23 capital budget of $3,600,000 net HST for the wastewater treatment plant pumping station number 11. Design and replacement and award tender 21-07E pump station replacement in new force main contract number 2, new river crossing in force main to the low bidder Dexter Construction Company Limited for a cost of $3,864,195.50, including HST, and $3,504,186.89 net HST.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Frazier. I should have asked you, what's the expected completion date for, like, the day they flip the switch and that force main becomes active and that pump station starts working and we actually see? This is a big project. I don't.
We'd be, if it went on schedule, it's March 31st, 2023, because we probably wouldn't put the pump station online, fully online, till we have the actual force main in place too.
Okay. No, I think it's good to manage expectations, and, you know, it seems like a long time, but time will go quick, and
Part of the pump station should be operational. The part that'll run during the dry weather events, that will actually be operational by hopefully April, May of this coming year, so 2022.
and that will help. That will help
Oh,
somewhat.
certainly.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Thorburn.
Just another question, Audrey, here, please. The old line that's crossing the river now, that's still going to stay in operation, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It
so we'll just
comes-
have a second line going across there.
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
great, thank you.
Okay, we have a mover and seconder. Any further questions? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Our next item is 9.4, Building Inspection Report for August 2021. There for your information, and it is, wow, value of building permits is through the roof. So like, I don't know how else to describe it. It is through the roof. So I know that our community development staff and our engineering staff are run off their feet with applications that are coming in, and it's good to be busy, but I know we are very, very busy. So that's there. If you have any questions, you can reach out to through the CAO to staff to get some additional information. Be interesting if the public takes a look at that chart and takes a look and sees where it is. I can't even angle my hand high enough to go. Number 9.5, tender for 2 new trucks of various sizes. It just sounds like we're going to buy a real truck, and then we're going to buy a truck. Yeah. Over to you, Mr. Davidson.
Good evening. Yes, so this is to follow up the approved budget, 21-22. The capital budget included the purchase of 2 new trucks. One was a dual-wheeled, 1 ton for the Public Works to replace the 2010 Ford 250 4x4, complete with dump box, and the second being another engineering truck to replace the 2009 Kia Rio, which was sold in surplus in February of 2021. We did issue or open up the tendering process in August, and we closed it at the end of August. We issued 3 tender packages, but only received 1 that included 3 different options for both vehicles. They were evaluated based on the criteria of pricing, compliance with specifications, warranty, fuel economy, and obviously the new item, which was the hybrid or electric options we included in this tender. Of the 3 of the tender with the 3 options, only 1 was within the budget range that met the tender criteria. In terms of the financial implications, the budget for the dual-wheel 1-ton truck was $55,000, and the option or the bid for that was below budget. Staff are proposing to use the remaining funds to outfit the new dual-wheel truck. The approved budget for the engineering truck, due to miscommunication during the budgeting process, it was we put $37,000 in the budget, but in fact it was suggested to put $45,000. Regardless, the bids that came in were over that. But the good news is, through the tendering process, we did find out that now there's hybrid and or electric options available for trucks now. So what is being suggested or recommended by staff, go back to the first page there, the engineering department recommends the purchase of the 2022 Ford 350 1-ton regular cab dual-wheel truck for the Public Works Department, complete with the provisional items of the plow package from GW Motors Limited, for a total price of $56,699.60, including HST, a net value of $51,417.17. We are recommending that for the second truck, where we did receive 2 options, but both are significantly over budget, so the engineering department recommends the truck not be awarded and rebudgeted next year. We'll continue to manage staff travel with our existing fleet or within policy of personal use of vehicles. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions from council? Deputy Mayor.
Matt, just with the hybrid, was there any rebate on those at all?
Not that I was aware of at this time, but it's something we could follow up.
So that kind of goes along with my question is do we tender for hybrids or electrics the exact same way we tender for other vehicles, meaning lowest price wins? Because I think we talked about this before, the life cycle costs of an electric vehicle and a hybrid are where the savings are. And I'm not suggesting necessarily that's all things are equal, but if you're going to go out and you're only going to base your award on the cheapest, then we will never have an electric vehicle in this fleet. So I'm hoping that especially when we're targeting electric or a hybrid alongside a regular gas or diesel vehicle, that we're factoring in that there are significant operational reductions in terms of cost. So
What I can say, staff have, in terms of this tender that was issued, there was an added value component that was part of the criteria. Staff have had some initial discussions on looking at maybe, as you've described, as life cycle cost. So you factor in your capital, but also what you hope to be lower operational costs or maintenance, as well as the potential disposal of the vehicle at the end of life when we're done with it. There is sometimes a value to those vehicles as well.
Okay, no, thank you. That helps put me a little bit more at ease. Other questions from members of council? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councilor Thorburn?
I was kind of waiting, but anyway, I would move that council of the town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of engineering department and award tender 21-09E to GW Mosier Limited for the purchase of the 2022 Ford F-350 one-ton regular cab dual-wheel truck for the Public Works Department, complete with provisional item plow package, $160 plus HST, for a total price of $56,699.60, including 15% HST, $51,417.17 net HST, and further that the second truck for the engineering department not be awarded and be rebudgeted in the 22-23 budget to attempt to obtain better prices.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. Further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is RFP 2021-07, Christmas on LaHave event title, sponsorship, and naming rights. And I think Mr. Hurdle is going to walk us through this one.
Should be a pretty brief one, Your Worship. As council is aware, for the past number of years, Christmas on LaHave has had a corporate title sponsor that has been done through the RFP process. The previous agreement, or most recent agreement, with the Chronicle Herald Limited expired this year. So the town issued RFP 2021-07 earlier this summer, put out a call looking for new sponsors for the 2021 event. We're crossing our fingers that Phase 5 will allow us to hold a proper Christmas on LaHave, complete with parade, fireworks, and the whole 9 yards this year. Unfortunately, as August 25th, the closing date passed, despite the fact that 7 packages were taken out by interested parties, none of those packages were returned. So, staff are coming forward tonight with 2 recommendations stemming from that. First, we're recommending that council close RFP 2021-07. And also, in the hopes that the Christmas on LaHave Committee can use its business contacts. The committee has been very adept at securing sponsorship dollars separately from the title sponsorship over the years, and they're quite confident that they can find something that would work. So they're also asking for council to authorize the Christmas on LaHave Committee, in conjunction with town staff, to pursue alternative procurement of a title sponsorship agreement for the 2021 Christmas on LaHave event, and that the CAO be authorized to execute a negotiated agreement on council's behalf.
Thank you. Are there questions from councilors on that? Councilor Thorburn?
Where Christmas on LaHave wasn't held the last couple of years, couldn't that contract, you would have thought, would have been extended a year or 2? Because we didn't hold it, and they were obligated to a 4 or 5 year contract. Actually, we're not holding it, they've only agreed to 3 years of the 5.
The way the contract was written for the last 2 years, it was very specific to 2019 and 2020, so the dates were identified in the contract.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councilor Caldwell, thank you.
I move that council for the town of Bridgewater close RFP 2021-07, Christmas on the LaHave, event title, sponsorship, naming rights, and further authorize the Christmas on the LaHave Committee, in conjunction with town staff, to pursue alternative procurement of a title sponsorship agreement for the 2021 Christmas on the LaHave event, and that the CAO be authorized to execute a negotiated agreement on council's behalf.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Fagier. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We're down to 9.7, which is our first quarter financial report for 21-22. I see Mrs. Hopkins, our Director of Finance, will run us through this one.
Good evening, everyone. You should have your quarterly report there as well as a written report. And I'm just going to go through the highlights of the financial report. So it covers the time period April 1 to June 30th of this fiscal year. For the most part, we are projecting a small surplus of $35,000 at this point in time, but it's just based on the first quarter, and some of the things that we're not sure of yet are still being projected at the full budget. The next quarterly report we should know with a little more accuracy, as opposed to last year when everything was up in the air for the whole year due to COVID impacts. Just, I know this one, I'll talk about it first because it's a highlight, deed transfer tax. We are currently at $296,000 in the first 3 months of the year, and our budget's $500,000. Every month in that 3 months, as well as July, have far exceeded any monthly amount from last year, and most of the monthly amounts from last year after we passed that initial reopening in the summer exceeded the monthly amounts from the year before. So these are not, sometimes we get a big boost when there's a lot of commercial activity or a big property transfers ownership, but these are, no identifiable properties in particular. These are just sales activity. So we're, for the first quarter, over budget by $171,000. We have not projected this to be over budget at year end because we just don't know. No. We hear that there's limited inventory and so on, with lots of encouragement for people to be listing their properties, but we just don't know, when this might stop. However, it's really good for us right now, and if it continues even at half the pace for the year, we'll exceed our budget. So we'll have a little bit of extra there, and hopefully everything else stays on budget, so we have a little bit of money to put aside for a project or what have you during the year. But it's looking like that will exceed budget because we don't have that far to go. So that's really the highlight of this report. There's a few other things to note. Under sales of service, we are currently over budget, and of course we're just the first quarter in. However, we are projecting to have under budget in our sales of service revenue, basically as a result of lost revenue for recreation, as well as sponsorship and so on from the Canada Day that we would have normally had, that was included in our budget. So while we'll also have some reduced expenditures, just kind of looking at that overall. Year to date, we're just looking at that number, we look like we're over budget. Some of that's timing, but some of it is police sales of services over budget for the year, but that could also slow down. And it's just projected at being on budget by the end of the year. Again, we'll know a little bit more after another quarter. Other revenue from owned sources, I think you just saw that in the building permit report, is that building and development fees are over budget and significantly over budget. So at this point in time, we're $41,000 over budget in other revenue from owned sources, the bulk of that from building and development fees. And we're projecting for that to be only slightly over budget by the end of the year, but we'll know more as we see what activity happens. Under conditional transfers from other governments, most of that is timing issue on the year-to-date. When we budget, we actually budget monthly. So sometimes we budget for things to happen in a particular month, but the actual doesn't come in until another month, so it throws this off a little bit because we don't want to go in and change that budget every time something does or doesn't happen, which is why the forecast is helpful. So you'll see that we're actually forecasting to be over budget in conditional transfers, and part of that's because we've received a $60,000 placemaking budget or grant, and so that's a significant unbudgeted item. So there'll be offsetting expenditures below that. So that's why that one is showing over budget. So overall, on the revenue side, we are projecting to be over budget by $34,000, but we are currently over budget by $213,000. On the expenditure side, a few things to identify. Under administration, most of it's just legal and salaries that are under budget due to vacant positions, collective agreement, bargaining, legal fees that we just haven't incurred at this point in time because, as I mentioned, we budget monthly. However, we just haven't incurred those at this point. If we move down to policing, again, it's just a timing issue as to when we incur an expense compared to normal. Fire protection, we're currently under budget. A lot of the accounts that are under budget relate to training and maintenance. Again, a lot of the training has taken a hit due to not having a lot of in-person training, so that's under budget as well. Under transportation services, which is the engineering for the most part, there's vacant positions, some allocation issues, nothing significant. Under environmental health, for sewer, again, a lot of repairs and maintenance, but we are projecting that one to be over budget by $60,000, solely based on chemical costs year to date. We're over budget on it just in the first quarter. So we're projecting that could be the case by the end of the year. Under environmental development services, economic action plan, this is where the placemaking expenses are budgeted. So you'll see that showing $60,000 over budget, but it's offset by the grant in the revenue. Under recreation and culture, again, we've talked about recreation programming. Our revenue is under budget, so will our expenditures. And the festivals line is the same thing we talked about earlier on the revenue side, losing the Canada Day funding, or some of it because we had reduced events. We also had reduced expenditures. So those are the highlights of the budget to date. The good news is we're not projecting to be over budget or to have a deficit at the end of the year.
Thank you. Questions from council? I know it would have been easy probably at budget time to say, oh, listen, D-transfer is going to be big, so let's change the budget, but I much prefer that we stick to what we know is very likely instead of over projecting and crossing our fingers. My only question is we keep getting dinged on these financial indicators from the province because we're offside of our budget and they don't care if it's to the good or not. So if this is a dumb example, but if the town bought a lottery ticket and won $1 million, we'd be punished for having $1 million too much, even though it would be a good thing if the town had a surplus of $1 million. So and I'll qualify that by saying I'm more than happy to go to battle with the province on I'd rather have under budgeted and had too much revenue than crossed our fingers. So, but are we expecting?
Their concern is the expenditure side. That calculation is based on expenditures. So we don't.
But they dinged us once for.
We don't get penalized for this. It's usually on the expenditure side that we get.
But didn't we one year we had
a large surplus.
Yeah.
One year, and then there was the 1 year we were over budget by $60,000 too much, and it was plus or minus 5%. It was higher than the 5% we were allowed to be over budget. So
and some of it has to do, largely with, say, capital budget, where you fund it out of operations too.
Okay.
And then if you don't do those capital projects, you're not funding it, and then you end up with a surplus, and it's on the expenditure side as opposed to the revenue side.
Okay. So then this won't be seen as a negative.
So
if we luck out and our maintenance for every category is way down, whether it's sewer or public, if our maintenance costs are down, that could, because they're so high, that is an area where we can kind of get dinged. We have a good winter versus a bad winter.
Right.
All those things, and then they start accumulating into we save money here, we save money there. It can be negative. Even though we set the money aside, we're required by the province, any surplus we have, to put it in reserve so that council can make the decisions when to spend that and what to spend it on. We are penalized if we're off by more than 5%.
Yeah. You're very much punished by them for following their own rules if you are.
And there's no, other than the report, there's no funding implications
No.
from them. It's
No.
just the report itself.
It just always becomes a news story, and then we always say, and it's always towns, because we have all the maintenance budgets, and it's always, these are the towns that have a negative, and then they don't talk about what the negative is, because to me it's a positive. Anyway, it just frustrates me. I'm just kind of setting myself up for what's going to come next year when it's the same report, it's the same thing, and it says, you save too much money. No. Okay, other questions? I know you're laughing at the same thing. I know you are. Okay, thank you. That's great. 9.8 is briefing note from September 7th discussion session. So in there, the two items that we discussed, the Green Choice Program, pre-expression of interest. So that was, I'm still trying to think about that one. So that's in there for the public to review. And then we had a great discussion on the business park analysis. And that was part one of the workshop. Part two will be next week. And I certainly appreciated the discussion on that. This will be an exciting thing as it keeps going forward. Next item is Business Arising and Unfinished Business Placemaking Project update from Develop Nova Scotia. And I see Ms. Childs is coming down.
Yeah, so I'll just give a little update of where we are with these projects. So if you recall, there's two projects going on with Develop Nova Scotia. One is focused on Shipyards Landing, and the other one is focused in the downtown. So for the Shipyards Landing project, staff has procured 2 accessible picnic tables, some recycled plastic Adirondack chairs, some bistro seating, and some string lights. We're not sure what the timeline will be like for implementation, but there's plans to put those up. And for the other project, the focus was on downtown, and staff provided kind of a scope of work or a project summary to Develop Nova Scotia and the other funders, and they requested that we focused on Bidgenwiska Park and the King Street lots to kind of activate those spaces. And by King Street lots, I mean the vacant ones beside the old Lanatai building. And the focus is on kind of beautification and activation to encourage more use and also some economic development downtown. So staff did some community engagement through a survey and also some chalkboards on site, as well as a whiteboard at the LCLC, just kind of asking some different questions to the community, seeing what people wanted to do. And based on that and some staff ideas, these have not been purchased yet, but they're in the process. The focus for the vacant lots on King Street is to add some planters and plants, kind of like a geometric, like versatile seating that's also kind of climbable. Potentially another type of seating, some lights, an interactive game, and an art installation that's being worked on by a local artist, and that would be kind of interactive as well in that creation of it. Potentially some other to be determined items. And at Bidgenwiska Park, there's plans to add different types of seating that currently exist right now. Again, there was some response from the community to have some Adirondack chairs there. There's the idea of having some kind of do-it-yourself musical instruments, so something there that people could interact with, some lights, and again, some other to-be-determined items. There was also, within this kind of scope of partnership with the Parkview Education Center Gay Straight Alliance, or Parkview Pride. So there were some picnic tables that they painted, and we're still working on those, but those will be put out in probably some parks as well around the same time. And I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the community involvement. It was really great. We had, I checked today, and I think we have about 100 responses to the survey, which was really nice to see. And there was a lot of interaction with the chalkboards. So there was already some ideas that staff had in mind, and we asked specific questions about it. But I just wanted to kind of touch on a few different ideas that came up as well. Some of them that could be done at this time, but also just some other ideas that people had. So things like a mural, a take a book, leave a book, like a little free library, more shade, some kind of kid-friendly activities like hopscotch, or someone had the idea of like a busy board for kind of kids to play with, and it helps motor skills. Some outdoor work equipment, spaces for couples and families, so not just big open spaces, but kind of smaller rooms, some more comfortable seating, a positive message board, one of those piano mats with sounds and lights, and some gardens. So it was just really nice to hear what people were hoping to see in these places downtown. And the timeline for that project is that it's intended to be done in the next couple of weeks, but obviously procurement will kind of affect that. And it's supposed to be a temporary project, so we'll just kind of, the plan is to play that by ear, see when we have to remove things for the winter or what can be done in that space for a little longer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Questions from council? Deputy Mayor Tanner.
Just out of curiosity, Mackenzie, the Adirondack chairs, will they stay out year-round?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll have to have some conversations with the parks crew just to see if they are sturdy enough. They're recycled plastic. They're kind of the heavy-duty ones, so that's something I want to explore. See if that's possible, just to have that space utilized in winter too.
Yeah, personally, we've left ours out for probably not 10 years now, and not a fade, nothings, and they're still great. But my other question related to that is, if not, where are you going to store them?
Yet to be determined.
Okay.
Yeah, but good to know about the kind of life of those ones.
Other questions? Councillor Caldwell.
Can you explain for citizens why the money, public money would be used for private lots?
Yeah, sure. So the focus isn't really on actually spending money on that lot permanently. It's just a really key space downtown that has a lot of potential. So the focus was, kind of the focus of placemaking is to activate unactivated spaces or create these places where people want to linger, where nothing is really going on right now, or there's a lack of something for people to actually do. They just bypass them. So the focus is very much on temporary things. So there's no plan on actually doing any infrastructure work there that will continue to be on that property. The property owner has just agreed to let us use the space for now while it's in this kind of transition phase. So everything that is there can also be moved to another park or something after.
That's a good question. Other questions? That's great. So you'll update us as things start to be deployed around the community?
Yeah, and hopefully sooner than later, and then we'll definitely promote that. So
awesome. Thank you. Our next item, 10.2, is remuneration review and job evaluation.
Okay, so this is, council gave notice that they would be considering amendments to the personnel policy at tonight's meeting that would potentially implement the job evaluation plan and the remuneration review. So in September 2020, council awarded an RFP for a job evaluation plan and salary review to Gerald Walsh and Associates. And the scope of work for this this review involved the creation of a position classification system and a job evaluation plan that would ensure that there was both internal equity and external equity, so that some people doing similar types of jobs, similar types of responsibilities, similar skills and requirements were compensated equally or similarly, and then that the salaries reflected market. Or at least we were aware what market was and could make a decision about where salaries would go. The delivery of the final report took longer than anticipated or desired. So we just got this report finalized, I believe it was, in June or July, which is why it's almost a year later that council's seeing the results of the review. And the pandemic, of course, played a role in that and impacting not necessarily our time, but the consultant's time in getting this done. So this work was done as part of implementing council's policy. So they have a policy now and the personnel policy that states that council will do a periodic review of non-unionized positions to ensure that salaries are fair and reflective of market value. And unionized positions, of course, are negotiated with the collective agreement. So they're done separately and differently than this. So this work was done to carry out that commitment of doing that review so that you could make some informed decisions with respect to that. Attached to the report is a draft policy. And so that policy makes changes to the personnel policy to essentially establish a job classification and evaluation system for the town of Bridgewater that would have all positions evaluated and put through this system, and it sets out some protocols or procedures that are to be followed. So the policy, essentially, it sets out responsibilities and states that council approves the classification and job evaluation system, as well as the salary structure. And then the CAO approves the individual bands and salaries within those bands and the placement of positions within the classification and salary range. It establishes the classification system that is based on job evaluation factors, so skill level, education and qualifications, autonomy and independence of action, decision-making and problem-solving, supervisory responsibility, job complexity, impact and accountability, and working conditions. And of course, there's weighted factors that go with those factors, or weights that go with those factors, sorry. And then from that, you get position classifications. So they have a score range. So when you run the positions through the job evaluation plan, you come up with a score. And that score, then they grouped positions based on scoring into 8 grades. So it goes all the way from grade 1 to 8, and then it has the scoring. So if you fall within the score of 218 to 315, you're in grade 1. And then they established with that salary ranges that would be associated with that, and that was based on market value reviews and research of similar type positions. The policy also notes that salaries and salary ranges will be adjusted by CPI. That's already within your existing policy. However, it's proposed to move it to April 1. That would align with the implementation of this policy, as well as how the police union, the PANs, they're done April 1, QP's done April 1. So it just brings everything back to April 1 and makes it all once instead of doing it a couple times a year. It's a little bit more efficient. The policy identifies step increases of promotions and how they occur. So step increases are tied to annual performance, so that's one important component of this this plan, is that you do not get an adjustment in your salary unless you have a satisfactory performance review. So if you have an underperformer, they don't move, they stay. If you have someone who performs, then they will get that annual stepped adjustment. So it's to reward positive performance. You can have a stepped increase if there's we rescope the position and add responsibilities, or there's new qualifications required for a position that would warrant a change. Then that can be done to ensure fairness to the employee. Market demands can impact external equity as well. So there are some positions that are extremely difficult to recruit for. We just can't get it whether we like it or not, and because of that, the market can actually say we're not paying enough, and that we'll have to adjust those in order to successfully recruit a position. And again, it's positions that are hard to recruit, or we want to ensure that we don't lose an employee to someone who's trying to recruit them. We can look at adjusting that as well. There's a review committee that's established and responsible for reviewing all position descriptions, and that has been done. And that committee, it states out who the membership is, so it's directors and our HR, and they are responsible. The benefit of the committee is it brings objective views to the review to ensure that it's just not one person doing it, and so it ensures that you have a little larger view of those reviews, and that ensures fairness for the employees, so they can have the comfort of knowing that it was a group that did that as opposed to one individual. And then they recommend to myself the placement within the classification system and the associated step within the salary range. So then that gets communicated to the employee, and there is an appeal process. So if an employee feels that something was overlooked in the job evaluation when it was evaluated against the factors, they can make that appeal, and then that gets sent back to the committee for another review, and then the CAO's decision would be final on that. And there's also a commitment to review the salary ranges every 4 to 5 years to ensure that we're reflective of market. which is beneficial for not only recruitment but retention of employees as well. So the financial analysis that was done, we did have a budget of $60,000 for salary adjustments, and that was with the proposed effective date of April 1. The employees have been waiting for this review since last, I think it was September, so they've been waiting longer than anticipated. It was hoped that we'd actually have this to be able to implement for this fiscal year, so we're a little bit behind. So it would be proposed that this would be retroactive to April 1, and the adjustments are within the budget that was set. CPI, however, is one where we just budget 2% every year, and CPI is trending high right now, so if we stuck with our November, CPI would be around 4%. And what we're suggesting is that we go back to April, where we would use February's number and CPI would be 2.4. But it'd be for the full 12 months, and that would just again bring everything back to April 1. So the total amount would be $135,000 to do the CPI, which is a separate budget altogether from the salary adjustments. We budget that every year, and then the salary adjustments, which does fall within the amount budgeted. And there is a contingency that can be used to fund the shortfall, but it's really the CPI that is funding the shortfall either way. If we wait till November, CPI is 4%, and we're paying more than what we budgeted anyway. So that's why it's being recommended we go to April 1 for the efficiency that's created by moving everything to April 1. If we do give the option of having an effective date of November instead of April for salary adjustments, as indicated, it was something that we'd hoped to be able to implement April 1, and it was the consultant's delay that caused this inability to implement in April 1. But if we waited to November 1, the salary adjustments would be $35,000 or $30,000, and we budgeted $65,000, so it'd be well under budget. CPI, however, would be at $60,000, and we budgeted $29,000 because CPI is 4%. And if you wait till November, so you're within budget, and you have a $4,000 variance to the good, mainly because the salary adjustments aren't happening April 1, they'd happen November. CPI would be over budget, but it would balance that out. You could say, no, we're going to do salary adjustments in November, and CPI will be salary adjustments in April and CPI in November, and you'd still be over budget because CPI, again, in November is 4%. In terms of legal, you're required to amend your personnel policy in order to adopt the salary administration and job evaluation program. This is a priority that was in the work plan for the CAO's office to complete, so this is being brought forward as part of that completion. Council has several options available to them. You can approve the revised salary administration policy, which includes a job classification and evaluation plan with an effective date of April 1, 2020. You can approve it with an effective date of November 1st, 2021. You can approve it so that the salary adjustments are April 1 and CPI is November 1. Or you cannot approve it at all. You can say, thank you, we reviewed it and we're satisfied with the structure as we have it. Or if you feel there's information missing, you can defer a decision and ask staff to bring back further information to help you make your decision. And the results of this will be communicated to staff once council makes a decision with respect to its approval or not.
And your recommendation is the April 1st date?
The recommendation is the April 1st date, and that we use the contingency to offset the variance. That's resulting from the CPI adjustments.
Questions from council? Councilor Thorburn.
There's been a lot of work put into this, and I think our employees are being treated fairly. And I would support the April 1st timeframe, and I would make that motion if so.
If you want to put the motion on the floor?
Yes, I would, please. Yep. I would move that council for the town of Bridgewater approve amendments to the personnel policy as outlined in Appendix B of document 20-147C to become effective immediately, which will A, approve and implement the classification and job evaluation plan as presented by Gerald Walsh and Associate. B, approve the revised salary structure for each classification. And C, approve changes to the CPI adjustments to coincide with step adjustments April the 1st, 2021.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Conklin. Further discussion?
Question?
Councillor Caldwell, you have a question?
Excuse me. I support the changes. I think they're reasonable and fair. I do have an issue with going back retroactively to April 1st. I've never worked a job where I received a retroactive raise, and I think most of our constituents haven't, and I have an issue with using public money to pay retroactively.
So fair point. You're suggesting a retroactive because the report was delayed.
The report was supposed to have been done by January for implementation in April, and that's not the fault of staff, that's the fault of the consultant. And because of that, it got delayed till July, with repeated requests to have the report before that, but it just didn't come. So that's why it was recommended for April 1st. And we do retroactive. So for instance, we're just about to start the QP negotiations. So when they'll negotiate a salary, and then we'll retroact that to their contract expired March 31st. So it's quite common to do that in a unionized environment, to go retroactive. So we will be doing that there too.
Other questions, comments? We have a mover in a second. You have a question, Deputy Mayor? No?
It would be a silly comment. I'm not making it.
Okay. No, I feel like we're missing out. All right, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Someone prepared to make the next motion. Councillor Thorburn, please. Thank you.
I would move that Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the use of contingency funds to offset the variance resulting from the CPI adjustments.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Tanner. Discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And the final one?
Yes, that Council for the Town of Bridgewater hereby repeal Policy 14, meeting pay, and Policy 24, annual salary increments, as the provisions are superseded in the revised personnel policy.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Conklin. I saw the corner of my eye. Discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Our next item is September 30th, National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. So that is new to most people, but the town will be recognizing that. And I don't know if you have some discussion to.
It requires an amendment to the personnel policy. So right now, your collective agreement for your QP and your police association for PANS automatically recognizes the day as a holiday because it's any federally, provincially, or town declared holiday, so it picks that up. However, the personnel policy does not. So half your workforce has it automatically, and the others, we require a revision to the personnel policy to add it as one of the listed holidays. So if council wishes to have it recognized for all employees, and thus town hall and everything would be closed that day to recognize that day. The amendments as included within the report would have to be approved. And I can say that since the date of this report, the province, at the time the report noted that we weren't too sure what the province was going to do because it was our understanding it required legislative change. So they have since come out and announced that they will be recognizing it for all provincial offices. It will be closed. And a number of municipal units are following suit as well.
Any questions on that? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Thurman, you're on a roll.
I don't know. Anyway, it is what it is. I would move that Council for the Town of Bridgewater recognize September 30th annually as a statutory holiday for all town employees.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Frazier, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed, motion is carried. Thank you. Someone like to make the second motion?
And I would
Councillor
also move that Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater approve the amended personnel policy September the 30th, added as a statutory holiday for non-unionized employees as presented in document 21-097B as a policy for the town effective immediately.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor. Oh, it's both at the same time, Councillor Caldwell. Discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. 10.4, second and final reading of Chapter 184, tax exemptions for nonprofit organizations bylaw, and this is for 629 King Street.
Yeah, so this is one where first reading was done earlier, I believe, in April. And the second reading was to happen prior to the interim tax bill going out. This would place this property on the full tax exemption. Council had already approved that, so this is really, it's something that we just caught, so it's coming forward to have second reading done on it so we can add it into the bylaw. I believe there was interest charged on the interim bill that we will have to have council agree to waive because it was our error, not anything to do with the applicant. They applied when they were supposed to apply and get everything done. So this will correct all that, put them on the list, and have that completed. And so, in addition to, I think the motion that council has, we'll need a subsequent motion to waive the interest from the interim tax bill.
Okay. Any questions on that? You know, everyone remembers we went through all this before, so this should be good to go. Is someone prepared to make this motion? Councillor Caldwell.
Move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the second reading of the proposed amendment to Schedule A, full tax exemption of Chapter 184, tax exemptions for nonprofit organizations bylaw, to include 629 King Street, entire property, as presented in document 20-213A, adopt as a bylaw and authorize staff to publish all public notices pursuant to Section 168 of the Municipal Government Act.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Conklin. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And then you need a subsequent motion of council to waive the
interest on the interim tax bill.
On the interim tax bill. Do I have someone prepared to make that motion? Is anyone prepared to make that? Deputy Mayor Tanner?
I move that the Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater waive interest on the outstanding tax bill.
For the interim tax.
Interim, sorry.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thorburn, discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And our last item of business is application to fly the Pride flag July 21st to 30th, 2022. I will say this group is always very organized, and shortly after we fly the flag at Shipyard's Landing on the community flagpole 1 year, they will make application the following year. So I really appreciate the long heads up. So someone prepared to make that motion. Councillor Caldwell.
I move the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the application for flying the Pride flag as per Policy 81, flag flying, on the designated special purpose flagpole located at Shipyard's Landing from July 20th to 30th, 2022.
Thank you. Have a seconder? Councillor Bashir. Any questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. That leads us to the end, so we do not have an in-camera meeting, so I know, look of shock, yes, no. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Councillor Thorburn, seconded by Councillor Caldwell. We are adjourned. Thank you. Good night.